All right. So let me go ahead and just start welcoming everyone because it's about 12:30 now. Thanks, everybody. This is Annalisa Burgos. I am an anchor reporter for KITV4 Island News, and this is another edition of Tsismisan, talk story about census, COVID-19, and today's topic is tourism. And I have the honor again of being joined by several distinguished panelists that know a lot about this particular topic, as we do every time we have this. So I'm glad to be part of this as usual. Again, just to remind everyone, if this is your first time joining one of these talk stories, Tsismisan actually means gossip in Tagalog, which is the main language of the Philippines country, and for sure we talk about it in kind of a negative tone, but we're using this as a positive spin. We're talking about kind of solutions with people on the ground that are seeing a lot of the devastation day to day in different sectors of the community. So this is our sixth one. We've had the privilege of having a lot of different topics, as I've said, care homes, businesses, and church, for example, and each one really focuses on a different sector of our Filipino community. And I've said this before, it really touches on all communities, and it's important, especially as we're getting our numbers counted for the census, and that's why we talk about the census as well. I want to acknowledge our partners, the Filipino Complete Count Committee, FYLPRO as usual, and the Ethnic Education Hawai'i. Thank you so much for bringing this great programming to our viewers across the world online. And note, we are on Facebook Live, and we are also on different platforms. Filipino Complete Count Committee Facebook page, be sure to like it because they continue to have updates for the community, and you also get a chance to win some prizes. And we also are simulcast on radio stations across the state. And so let's invite our listeners on Oahu who are live on KNDI 1270, on Maui Mix 105.5 FM, and on Kauai 107.9 FM, KTOH HD3. Thanks again for joining us for this very important discussion. And let me introduce our panelists. Let's get to it. Our first panelist is Senator Glenn Hawai'i. He is the chair of the Energy, Economic Development, and Tourism Committee. He has been in public service since 2002, and he brings a wealth of experience, of course, including being in my profession. You are a recovering broadcast journalist, Senator. So, yeah, for sure. You can, but you never really leave, I think, this industry. Senator Hawai'i, of course, is Filipino at heart. We love it, and he knows a few choice Tagalog phrases. Why don't you thrill us with one of your phrases, Senator?
Maraming salamat po, Annalisa. I speak konti lang Tagalog. Magsalita ng Tagalog mahirap.
Oh my gosh, it's better than mine almost. All right, well, welcome, Senator. Our next panelist is Michael Dahilig. He, of course, is well known in Kauai. So thank you so much for joining us, representing them. He is serving as the Kauai County Mayor, Derek Kawakami's managing director, overseeing 14 administrative departments. Wow, that's a lot. He previously served for 8 years as the county's planning director. He is a member of the Hawaii Bar, receiving his law degree from the Richardson Law School, and also has a master's in urban planning and a BS in geophysics from UH. Wow, that's interesting as well. Part of batch 3 of the Filipino American Young Leaders Program. Of course, FYLPRO, that's one of our sponsors. Welcome, Michael. Good to see you. Mabuhay.
Mabuhay.
And then, of course, we have Julie Arrigo. She is the general manager of Halipuna Waikiki by Halekulani and has been in the tourism industry since 1994. So she's a veteran, founder of Women in Lodging and Tourism, and sits on a number of nonprofit boards. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
And then we have Gemma Weinstein, is the president of Unite Here, Local 5, a union that represents over 12,000 workers in the hospitality, healthcare, and food service industry statewide. And I know I've met so many great people in that union. She has been a proud member of Local 5 since 1990 and worked as a housekeeper for Ala Moana Hotel. Good morning, Gemma.
Morning, aloha.
Oh, it's afternoon, I guess. Afternoon by now. Good to see you. And
Thank you.
Our regular guest every session is Annie Sokol. She is originally from Mindanao, representing the South in the Philippines, speaking Tagalog and Visayan, of course, and she's our partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. Her role is really to promote the census and really get us ourselves counted for all the great resources. Good to see you, Annie.
Good to see you too, Annalisa.
All right, we will let you click off as we do our panel discussion for sure. We talk about tourism and how important it is for the Hawaii economy and just businesses devastated without the tourism money. Let's start first with Senator Wakai. Give us a framework for how important tourism really is.
First of all, magandang hapon sa iyong lahat, to all of the folks listening in and watching. But to your question, Annalisa, tourism is our number one economic engine. Last year, it brought in $17.6 billion. And when you look at the state's entire GDP, or gross domestic product, those are goods and services the state offers, tourism is almost 20% of all the money that we generate out of the state of Hawaii. So you can tell, it's the big dog. 1 out of every 4 people in Hawaii have a job that is directly related or dependent upon tourism. And now you look at where we are. 172,000 of our neighbors are unemployed or catching some type of unemployment benefits. It's so ironic that here we are in August, and in January of this year, we were talking about over-tourism. We were figuring out, how do we stop this deluge of tourists here? 10 million, right? That was the pain point. People were talking about we're having too many tourists here. And look at where we are today. This day last year, we had about 35,000 people coming in. As of yesterday, 2,700 people arrived here in Hawaii. Tourism has dropped off by 98%. So, considering how big of a driver it was, and to see where we are today, our economy is just decimated by the fact that we don't have tourism here. And, we were supposed to open up tourism August 1st. The governor decided to push that back to September 1st. So it's not as if things are going to get better anytime in the near future. I think from a state level, have to have a clear tourism recovery plan. I've not seen a plan as of yet. And everybody on this call who is dependent upon tourism deserves to have something, to have some level of hope and confidence. I don't think a lot of us have a lot of that at the moment. And so we're in a kind of a dire situation with, I'm not too sure where that light at the end of the tunnel is going to be coming from.
Yeah, so difficult for so many different factions, including the hotels. Let's turn over to Julie to talk about that perspective. I live in Waikiki, Julie, and just walking around and seeing a lot of these businesses closed and, boarded. What's the feeling like amongst your, colleagues and yourself?
Well, definitely looks like a ghost town in Waikiki, that's for sure. I wanted to share, kind of like tacking on to Senator Wakai's comments with regards to the industry and how it's impacting the hotel industry. As Senator Wakai mentioned, the number of visitors has drastically been reduced. And fortunately for the hotel industry, we get really good information from HTA, which just to keep us informed. And as of June, if you were to compare year over year as to how we are doing, normally average rate of hotels statewide is about 185. It's dropped about 42.4% for those that were open in June, and that's not a lot. Even occupancy is usually on average about same time last year in the mid 80s, and it has dropped drastically too to about 68.3% drop. So for those who are actually operating, again, very small amount, that's quite a huge drop. I think an average about 15.6%. And so the hardest hit hotels are really the luxury class levels, which is understandable. With visitor arrivals and the quarantine, really, our market share, put it this way, the flights coming in from Japan, which is a big market for Hawaii, used to be 22 flights coming into Hawaii. Now it's 0. And that's the same case for flights coming into Hawaii from Australia, Canada, and other Asian countries. So it's been a very it's very dismal statistics. I mean, overall closures of hotels here statewide, we have about 290 hotels statewide, and about 45% are closed right now. In Waikiki alone, almost about the same, 45% are closed. We have about 84 hotels in Waikiki and 38 of them are closed. The same thing for Oahu overall. We have 94 hotels overall, and about 50% of that is closed overall in Oahu. So it's a huge impact as far as the situation right now in the hotel industry.
And I know they've tried to pivot to Kama'aina, right? Offering some staycations to just kind of get through this pandemic. Has that helped at all?
I have spoken to colleagues in the industry who managed hotels that are open. It does help. I see it as a help right now for the short term because especially local people with the stay-at-home restrictions, I think people are antsy. And so to be able to just hop to another island is something as far as travel. If they had planned to go to the mainland, it's something to be able to travel. So it has helped, but it's not going to be the big impact that we need in order to get our hospitality industry back to somewhat normal. And it's expected to take a while before that happens, as Senator Wakai had mentioned.
Yeah, it's really just kind of a Band-Aid for now. And, I personally went to Kauai recently and stayed at a hotel over there, the Kauai Beach Resort, and there was just no services. And a big part of this, this is a way to segue to our next guest, Gemma, about, the workers and how important it is to staff these hotels so that even the Kama'aina who are vacationing and trying to enjoy the economy as much as they can during the pandemic, without the services, without the workers, you can't really do that, right? How are the workers doing?
Well, I think we kind of all know about what's going on, right? And just like that, everybody's life changes. And with all these changes that we are in right now, we have a one chance to get things right. Tourism will still be the vital from our thousands members and even thousands more out there that actually depend on tourism. But we have an opportunity to re-envision what tourism works for workers and locals alike. Perhaps we don't need as many as visitors coming. And instead, we need to refocus what makes Hawaii an international destination. To begin with our people, a beautiful island, and the aloha spirit. Valuing workers and top quality service, we have a chance to get things right. By putting workers on front and center. People struggle. We talk about it all the time. One job should be enough, but it's not enough. So let's do it right. Let's make sure tourism actually help workers and our local families. Yeah. If tourism is a king, workers shouldn't be struggling. So thank you for that question.
Well, I was going to just follow up because, talking to a lot of hotel service workers in covering the pandemic, it just really reveals how difficult and how, low paying some of these jobs are. And, just one change to the schedule can impact so many lives, right? Because there's so many people that rely on maybe one person's salary, that may not be paid even at a living wage. I mean, it just raises this issue of, are workers getting paid enough? Is that kind of the conversations you're starting to hear, or is it sparking this?
Yes, because right now, our members have a good job, but with this change, like we have families like husband and wife working in hotel industry, in food service. And right now, not even one of them have income. And this is something that we actually talk among ourselves. That's why it's very important, like we live in tourism. Tourism is the industry in Hawaii. But how can we make that change? yeah, again, I'm just gonna repeat. Maybe we can refocus on what makes Hawaii is actually an international destination.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to go back into the same problem that we have now.
Mm-hmm. And let's bring in Mike now. What about on Kauai? Like I said, I did go visit there, and it was very, very empty. What's the mood over there?
I think people here are, generally just in a holding pattern. Many of the shoes that we anticipate to drop quite haven't dropped yet. This week is pivotal because, the Congress still has not extended the $600 kicker when it comes to unemployment benefits. So, a lot of these things that we've known are going to be coming down the pipeline are really going to start hitting home now, especially with the announcement of Hawaiian Airlines laying off a number of people. There's 53 on Kauai alone that are going to be hit just with the Hawaiian Airlines layoffs. And so, for an island that previous to COVID had only 2.1% unemployment, to all of a sudden go to 31% unemployment right after COVID, it just shows how fragile an economic structure our island has when it comes to reliance on tourism. And although some of that unemployment has kind of waned, you're lucky that you got to stay at the Kauai Beach Resort, but that's one of the very few hotels that is actually open on the island. And it's really indicative of the fact that as much as when we restarted inter-island travel, inter-island travel and the Kama'aina economy is really not enough to be able to sustain, a lot of the over-reliance on tourism that we have in our economy. Just as the senator mentioned, when it comes to statewide statistics on how much GDP is actually generated by tourism, on Kauai alone, we have $2 billion a year in GDP local generation just from the tourism sector alone. So, in as much as we have a lot of these programs that are coming out with things like PPP, unemployment benefits, CARES Act money, those are really a drop in the bucket when it comes to the overall standard of economy that we're used to having here. And so that's why I think people are just waiting to see, as the senator mentioned earlier, what's going to happen on September 1st. Are people going to be wanting to come here? How can we do it safely? And then what will that new normal look like? And I think, this week and in the coming weeks, these shoes are really going to start dropping.
Yeah, so many people impacted by this uncertainty. Back to you, Senator. We talked about this on the Chamber of Commerce call also, is the uncertainty of everything, how the kind of the lack of a plan or clear defined triggers on the government side is kind of preventing businesses from planning ahead. Even the fact that September 1 is supposed to be the so-called reopening to tourists, that's up in the air. So what kind of guidance, what can we do when it comes to, this uncertainty? What can businesses do and workers?
I think because the governor and DBED are devoid of any ideas, I think the tourism industry should come up with what the reopening plan is. I mean, we all wanted to pivot to the government doing that, but if they're absent from the table, then let's figure it out from the private sector side. I mean, the idea that they have about having people voluntarily test before they get on the plane. I mean, if you think about that, that is such a ridiculous proposition. If half of us on the plane have been tested and are COVID-free, but the other half are not, we're going to be on a plane for 5 hours from someplace. Garens, ball barons, the dirty guys who didn't get tested are going to infect the clean guys that are on the plane. So we cannot have that kind of choice of testing before they get on the plane. It's either got to be everybody on the plane gets tested or the plane doesn't come here. And if we're going to accept folks from the mainland or wherever, we should have testing locally as well. It baffles me that there's a lot of CARES money. Almost $100 million went to the airport. 34 million went for thermal testing and imagery. But we should be building up and standing up a state laboratory at the airport. It's COVID now, but guarantee down the road there's going to be some new disease or ailment that's going to hit us. We should set up a state laboratory in the airport, which has space. We have the money. We should build it out so we can have robust testing locally. To me, that's the key. The idea of contact tracing, and I'm going to chase people all around the island with AGs and cops, that is such a ridiculous proposition. To me, it's all based on testing. We have the time, we have the space, we have the resources to really push testing, but we're not doing that. And so to answer your question, I really think that the private sector, HLTA, airlines, attractions should really be coming up with the reopening plan and saying, here, Governor, just bless this thing and let's get moving.
Are you concerned that we are going to move that date again, considering our rising numbers, though?
Yes, I totally agree, because right now we're just depending upon what is going on globally, right? Hot spots here, hot spots there, maybe Japan, maybe not Japan, maybe Australia, maybe not Australia. We have no control over what happens beyond our borders. We have full control of testing locally. To me, that's the key to any kind of reopening proposition.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go now to back to Julie. You know, if we do see this reopening date pushed back, we already had it pushed back once from August 1st. What can hotels do? I mean, it's just so much work involved, right? To prep, to clean, and to get staff back. What would that mean for you and your industry?
No, it is. It would be unfortunate to see the quarantine continuing to be pushed back. I know there's a lot of factors that are considered by the government and by the governor as far as that decision. But as far as hotels, as Senator Wakai, I'm going to go back to Senator Wakai and what his statement just is that it really is, and I know HLTA has been doing its part in showing the governor and our government what exactly Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association is doing to promote, again, a healthy environment for visitors and employees to come back to by putting together a safety guidelines for all of its members in alignment with the National Association. Because even on the national end, the American Hotel and Lodging Association has also developed its own guideline nationwide that's been shared and approved, and in working with the right entities to make sure it meets the expectations of sanitation and cleanliness. And that is what HLTA has used as a foundation to create our own local guidelines, which the governor apparently has reviewed. And I think I saw the news clip. I know Senator Wakai was there when the announcement of, I think we featured 3 hotels that are sharing because they've opened August 1st and are sharing what kind of protocols they are actually put into place in order to share with visitors and its employees what has been done. And there is a lot of work and effort, a lot of money put into it, even though we do foresee that immediately after opening, we're not going to expect the kinds of occupancies we experienced pre-COVID. But we want to reopen, but we want to do it safe and we want to do it smart. And we want, number one, our employees to feel comfortable coming back to work, knowing that we took care of them, and then they can then in turn take care of our guests. So it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, I did want to ask you about another idea that had been proposed amongst all these discussions. So a senator had mentioned testing on arrival and contact tracing. What about quarantining for arrivals, right? There was this concept that why don't we designate a hotel, 2 hotels, something near the airport where you can force people to quarantine for 14 days. Whatever happened to that idea?
You know, I do know that was a discussion that had come up, and to be honest, I don't know where that is at this time.
What do you think
I do
about
know
it?
that, I think that if we can find a safe location for, it doesn't have to be hotels, but that is something that was proposed, but a safe location for visitors who are positive and need to be quarantined in one area, then that's the case. But, it all goes back to, again, what Senator Wakai said is, if we could just be more strict with regards to testing and not making it a sort of you should, but it's not a you must. And therefore we won't have to worry about the situations where we do have visitors who get somehow through the guidelines they're supposed to be adhering to, and with the potential to infect the community. So it really has to be more strict enforcement, I think, of testing before they even arrive to the state.
Yeah, because I remember other countries have done it. So everyone always asks, why don't we do that? Why don't we? Because in the end, then it limits their exposure to our community.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's turn now to Gemma. You know, from the hotel workers' standpoint, obviously safety and being comfortable being at work. I know some of the grievances I heard from union members was maybe the lack of support or protection provided by their respective employers, maybe them not stepping up enough to support them. What are you hearing as far as what you need to do ahead of reopening for tourists?
Well, so thank you again. So right now what we're doing, we're actually going to the property. We train our members to actually inspect the property because employer is not including the workers when it comes to the safety. Yes, we do respect that management have the right to do what they want to do, but with this situation, members or employees should be involved, and we're going there, and we found a lot of, like what you said, we file a grievance because of lack of some stuff that need to be done. And I just heard that, yes, hotel when open, they call their employee to go to work. Now that they're open, did they even have a training before they start to work? I think that's very important. You can open your hotel and bring the tourists and call the workers to work without training. That's very important for us. Because with this pandemic, we don't know what's going to happen to individual. When we get sick, when the workers get sick, it's not just the workers get sick. They can bring that home and can spread to community. And I want to just reiterate what Senator Wakay said about testing. Testing is very important. Yes, you can test tourists if you don't test the employees. We don't know if the employees is positive and actually infect the guests. So let's involve, I think for me, let's involve the workers. With the workers' perspective, I don't think we're ready right now. Mm-hmm. What we're doing in Kahala, we involve the workers and actually set up or make a protocols on each individual department. And the workers are actually involved. And that's what we want on every hotel, involve the workers. Let's sit down and bargain for the safety of the workers and involve them, not just for the management side.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, every company is so different, right? They have different protocols, different policies. There might be, like you just mentioned, the ones that are pioneering and doing great things, and then others that might be dropping the ball. Is there something that the government can do to help?
Well, we can, it's important for them to actually, I think Senator Wakay or somebody else said that they have to be open and show their protocol to public. And I think it's important also for the public, to have a role, and play a role to ensure public health in hotel and other places. And government, I think they gotta enforce on something. They gotta be involved in this, not just the hotel, government, especially government. This is your people in this state, Hawaii. Let's take care of people of Hawaii, government.
Mm-hmm. And what about you? Who's just spoke up? Was that you, Senator?
Well, that's me. But I agree with people saying that it's really government's role and responsibility to figure out how we move forward. I mean, the choke point is at the airport. That is totally the jurisdiction of the state government. So until we figure things out, it doesn't matter what great plans Julie come up with and other hotels and attractions come up with. There's nothing to sell unless we allow for a smart, strategic reopening of tourism. So really, the burden and the future success of our islands depends upon the state and having a clear recovery plan at its airports.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Mike? Well, you want to weigh in on everything that you've heard?
Right. It comes down to two very, very basic questions when it's regarding enforcement, because the local governments are responsible for enforcing the quarantine orders. And there's no better safety measure for the public than making sure that a 14-day quarantine is followed by people that want to be here. And so what we need from the state are systems that tell us who needs to be on quarantine. That's the first question. And the second question is, where are they? And that really is it. It's two very basic questions. But where we struggle is the ability to have those systems feed into our local law enforcement in real time and very efficiently with a degree of accuracy. And so by September 1st, these are the types of things that we do need in hand to be able to ensure safety and a safe enforcement of our quarantine orders. Because if we have people that are going to be on test or no test, exempt, not exempt, all these things have to be factored into how we push information to our local law enforcement. And right now, we do not have a system. And I'm not trying to be dramatic about it, but we need something that we can rely on that is beta tested exactly 1 month from now. And so those are the things that we have to look at. And if we don't have the systems, then the mayor here is asking the question, well, then what do we do, right? And so we've been trying to be proactive in looking at things like geofencing or things like again, the bubbles, the on-island bubbles. We're actually rolling out an internal test with technology that we brought in from Hong Kong to be able to see if that can help answer at least the question of, okay, we know you're on quarantine, where are you? That at least will help us ensure that we are separating those that are on the quarantine and those that are not, and ensuring that people know and have the accurate information to be able to keep people that are violating the quarantine away from the public and held accountable if they choose not to live with the law here.
And are those types of projects funded locally from CARES Act money that you've been allotted for the county?
To some degree, yes, and it's in a partnership with our local visitors bureau. So these are things that we are kind of homegrowing to some degree, because we need to ensure that we have a plan B in the event that we do not have the systems necessary to be able to tell us again, are you supposed to be on quarantine, yes or no? And if you are supposed to be on quarantine, where are you?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, just going back to Senator Wakai. So again, it sounds to me the testing and the contact tracing, again, very important to install even before these tourists arrive. But barring any of that, is there any other way that we can get that money, that CARES Act money, and fund this? I just don't know where the hang up is there. Is that a governor decided move? Like it's nothing to do with the lawmakers or legislature at this point?
Well, we gave the governor $100 million earlier this month through a CARES Act bill. So as I think I was mentioning, 34 million went to thermal testing. So now they take your temperature instead of with a guy with a little ray gun on your head. The imagery will just automatically test your temperature. So we still have somewhere in the magnitude of $60 million to go and do more contract testing, do testing, contact tracing, and doing testing. So there is money out there. There's just a lack of leadership and strategy as to how to deploy money to safeguard us and properly reopen tourism.
Okay, well, that's the question we need to have answered maybe for the next press conference for the governor. But at this point, we'll give you guys a break and we'll bring back in Annie to talk about the census, because that is why we are all here to discuss the resources that are so important to going forward, especially as we try to recover from this pandemic. So let's give our other panelists a break. And there she is, Annie. So give us an update. As we always like to do, we want to know how Hawaii residents are doing in terms of responding.
Sure, Annalisa, it's my favorite part of this show. So just for context, currently, nationwide, 62.8% of households proactively responded or self-responded to the 2020 census, and most of them did it online. And for the state of Hawaii, 58.9% of households already responded as well. And if we break that down by county, Honolulu County, the most populous county in the state, leads at a higher score than the nationwide score actually, which is at 64.7%. So that's great. and it's followed by the Garden Isle of Kauai, 50.2% self-responded there. And Maui is at 49.1%, while County of Hawaii, the Big Island, is at 45.5% and Kalavao at 21%. So if your Ohana is part of these numbers, yay, thank you so much for responding. And if you haven't responded yet, what are you waiting for? Let's get those numbers up.
Yeah, last time we talked about maybe your door-to-door effort. Is that still pushing through? What's the update on that as well?
Yeah, so actually, beginning last week on July 30, Hawaii is one of the few areas in the country who started the non-response follow-up operation. And this is when our census enumerators knock on the doors and follow up with those households who have not yet responded to the census. So, because again, we want a complete and accurate count, and we don't want to miss anyone on this very important count. So if you want to help us out and you want to help your community, and if you prefer to respond to the census at your own time and you prefer not to be interviewed by a census taker, it's not too late to respond to the census. You can still do it online at my2020census.gov or over the phone at 844-330-2020. At kung gusto nyo pong sumagot sa Tagalog, maaari po kayong tumawag sa 844-478-2020, and you can still also send back your completed paper questionnaires.
Okay, and it's so important because, again, these go to funding the resources for the community. I can't remember, do you have the dollar amount per person?
Well, according to, it varies, but according to the Counting for Dollars, in 2016, it's a study by George Washington University for Hawaii that can be around $2,000 to $2,500 dollars per person per year. That's what it means in dollars. So we don't want to miss out on any of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Very important, funding for our community.
All right. Well, I wanted to bring back Senator Wakai and Mike because they have their own personal thoughts of of completing the census. I know I have that a long time ago. It seems like ages ago with the pandemic. But Senator Wakai, what are your thoughts? I know this is an important issue for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, despite all the dismal numbers for tourism, 2020 is a great year for civic engagement. We have an election, and the census is, to me, is just as important as the right and the necessity to vote. From a government standpoint, we look at it from funding, as Annie was just mentioning. There's dollars associated. So if you're missing, those are missing dollars. Those are $2,000 times X number of people who are not going to get services here. And particularly, perhaps for the audience that's listening, the ethnic community needs to, more so than other communities, be represented, because sometimes, there's language barriers. There's other issues that befall an ethnic minority group that, a mainstream American or whatever the term might be, might not have to avail themselves to certain social services. So having a clear number of census individuals is really, really important.
Yeah, accuracy, the more accurate, the better, for sure. Let's bring in Mike. You actually were part of the 2010 census efforts when you were part of the Department of Planning. How was that?
Well, it's tough to articulate the reasons why we ask people to spend 5 minutes and fill out a form, but it has consequences for the next 10 years. And, how even things like eligibility for certain federal programs is, highly dependent on the demographics of the census. For example, we have things like opportunity zones that are dispersed throughout the state to help investment. And if the metrics don't look right, and a lot of our minority groups don't go ahead and add their names to the census, places will get mischaracterized as not needing that support. And so those are the types of things that we went around 10 years ago, and we're doing again this year with our planning department 10 years later, is to really emphasize that these collective efforts by everybody in our community add up to very real, hardline, eligibility items that we may miss out on as a state. So it's really critical for everybody to understand that they need to be counted, and to be counted means that we're going to get and be able to provide the appropriate support that will be passed down from the feds.
And let's bring back Gemma and Julie about their experience about the hotel industry being a big part of this as well. Let's start with you, Gemma. What can you say about the census and how important it is?
I think it's very important because every time we ask funding from the federal, we need to have that final number that actually live in Hawaii, because if not, then we're gonna have lesser than what we actually need. So I just wanna ask the members, like local 5 members, it's important no more than ever right now that we need to go and fill out that census, because we need a federal fund. We need that dollar. And I wanna talk to local 5 nga Ilocano, nga panahon ket naka-importante nga masapol nga mapan kayo iti or ag-fill up kayo kada iti census. Masapol nga da kayo ket maibilang. Dato bilang numero nga manoti agigyan ti Hawaii ket iso ti pagkitaan da no manoti iti da nga pundo aggapot ti federal. Iso nga kasapulan nga tayo amin nga gigyan ito'y Hawaii ag-fill out tayo ti census. Salamat po.
Well said. Okay, and Julie, what about you? What's your take on it from your side?
Well, I have to say, okay, and I know that I've talked to others about this. The census form is not a pretty form. It's nothing that really is attractive or what have you. It's just a boring piece of paper. But I think people just need to be educated on how important that form is. And when you do see it in the mail, now that you're listening to this, this live broadcast about how important this census form is, I think people should really pay attention to it when they get this census form in the mail. Because the Filipino community here in Hawaii is a large population. I'm speaking also for the tourism industry, which is the largest industry in Hawaii, and the biggest population of the demographics in this industry is Filipinos. I myself am a Filipino, and I understand the importance of it. I actually had to tell my parents to make sure to fill out the form and not look at it as just a piece of mail that you put on the side or throw in the rubbish can. And they do it. But the importance of it is that, and Gemma said it right, everyone has actually made note of it, is that I think people need to realize that when Hawaii is in a situation where we need the monies to be considered to give to us, Hawaii is an island now in the middle of the Pacific, and we have crisis here in Hawaii. And there are times when we need to ask the federal government for support to help all of our community. But if only a small percentage of our community fills out that form, it's very difficult for the federal government to understand just how much we need to help our entire community. So I think that's something that I'd like to stress. And our industry is very familiar. I mean, we have hurricane season right now. We've got all kinds of things that happen to our state, and we sometimes do need to ask for those funds. So besides everything else that everyone has mentioned in terms of how important it is, I think this is something I want to kind of drive to the listeners to this program today.
Yeah, good reminder for sure. Annie, last thoughts. I know for the Filipino community, we sometimes like to be private. We don't want to air out all of our kind of personal information, and there might be fears of revealing some of this information about multi-generational households and who's living in our house and things like that. Reassure our viewers that this is really private information.
Yes, I just want to, repeatedly say, and I would say it over and over again, your census responses are safe and confidential. Your answers are not being shared to any government agencies, and we take a lifetime oath to protect your information. So we value it so much. And in closing, I just want to quote our team lead, Shar, and she mentioned it in one of the media briefing this week. And I think she really put it beautifully. And when she said, and I want to echo that, she said, don't delay, don't procrastinate, really take back into our hands the power to influence and direct our own future. that's all. Maraming salamat po.
All right. Thanks, Annie. Good to see you. And don't forget, if you have any more questions about the census, you can go to Filipino Complete Count Committee there. Okay, let's pivot back to our discussion about tourism. We're going to talk again about the morale of what's happening and just kind of how we can move forward from here. Gemma, give us just an overview about how you're providing, or how, you know, the community has been responding to the needs of so many people that are unemployed, furloughed because of the pandemic, and hotels remaining closed.
Well, thank you, Annalisa. So we represent about like 12,000 members, and 9,000 members actually furlough right now. And what we did is, you know, from the beginning, we deploy our staff to actually help workers to fill up their unemployment, because majority of our members actually like work in the industry about 30, 20, 30, 40 years, and they never fill up unemployment. So we deploy our staff to help them out. It's about like 6 to 7. We did almost everything to assess them. And look, we did create some resources, and we do it like every single day. We have a text bulletin board, and we import it to give them some updates. We have like Facebook Lives, we have town hall via Zoom, and our leaders in property, we actually have like every week meeting. And just to support each other, we extend our medical to our members on our own fund. And we also ask the nonprofit organization to help us for food distribution, like the Accounting LLC and Kaiser and Ham Food, something like that. And also, we also give like a food like card, grocery card to our neighbor island, and we train people. And I think the most thing that what we did is we help the state to actually set up the quarantine. And sorry about my dog.
That's okay.
So yeah, we set up that quality, that homeless facility in I think in Kalihi, and the one that working over there is actually some of the local 5 workers that furlough. And we did all this because our members did all this. It's not enough, and we did everything. It's not enough yet. We still have to do more. And just to tell you, we got nothing from the government specifically. And I think that's something that we should talk about it, and I think legislature need to step up and do something for these workers. Thank you.
That's kind of surprising to me. What about you, Julie? How about hotels? I know, are they stepping up to help their employees as well? Have you heard of any kind of instances that they're responding?
Yes, I think there's the hotels are there are some hotels that are helping in ways of covering maybe benefits. But I know the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association has also started an initiative to help in some respect, to some extent, with the hospitality industry workers who have been furloughed in terms of food drives. So there is an initiative called #AlohaLater. And it's basically a fundraising effort so that food drives can be set up. And I believe they've already done several, and they share the information with all the member hotels of the association so that we can share it with our employees. So although my hotel is closed, we receive that information, and we have a way to communicate to all of our employees via a communication system that we have here, so that they're aware of these food drives. So that's something that the local association here has been doing to help the workers that are furloughed and need to support their own families in that way.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Senator Wakai? Going back to you about kind of what the government can do for the workers in the hotels right now that just don't have to have any kind of direction at this point, especially with the September 1 date still kind of up in the air. What can you say about what government can be doing at this point?
Well, local lawmakers were anticipating the $600 a week plus up from the federal government was going to come to an end last Friday. So we had in the bill we passed earlier last month had done $100 plus up. I mean, not a huge amount of money, but an extra $400 a month could be meaningful to an individual. Unfortunately, the governor vetoed that part of the measure. So, I mean, we can't do anything that's particularly for tourism workers, right? We got to worry about people in other sectors. But we thought that was fair, that everyone who's collecting unemployment, tourism or not, would get an extra $100. But that's gone. Also in the bill that we had passed was $35 million for kind of helping retrain and kind of a paid internship program where the government was going to partner with the private sector. The governor scratched that as well. Actually, he didn't scratch. He went from $35 million to $10 million. Those were two parts of that bill that were directly going to help people who are struggling with unemployment and help retrain people into perhaps a different profession. So government has tried to do, or lawmakers have at least tried to do something to help the working class. Unfortunately, sometimes government isn't firing on all cylinders. So we have a little trouble with our administration not seeing things the same way as we do.
Yeah, we've always talked about this as well as the need to diversify Hawaii's economy away from this dependency on tourism. Are we even there yet? Are those discussions happening seriously as opposed to, cloud talk that we always usually hear?
Well, I've been in the legislature for 18 years. I think a vast majority of my time there has been spent on trying to look at diversifying our economy. We're seeing the folly of not doing so in the past. In my opinion, the best time to reinvent the economy is when times are good. At this time, when we're in the toilet, we're not going to reinvent a new diversified industry. We're going to have to rebuild what we know, which is tourism. But after that, I mean, we have to have learned a lesson from 2020 that we need to put more eggs in more baskets. To touch briefly on what those opportunities are, in Hawaii, we always cry about our location, our isolation as a detriment. We talk about the price of paradise. I try to put forth the idea of prosperity in paradise. And to achieve that, I have what's called a AAA economic plan. We will focus on three areas where Hawaii's situation and its locale is uniquely positioned for us to be global leaders. And those three A's are aquaculture. We import more fish than we export. That is ridiculous to me. Aerospace is another A. That's where it's more than just Mauna Kea and telescopes. It's about launching satellites into space, doing laser communication, doing space tourism in the future. But our proximity as the state closest to the equator makes us the perfect spot for looking at the mysteries of the universe as well as launching satellites into space. The third A is alternative energy. We already are seeing how Hawaii is leading the planet on 100% renewable energy portfolio. We have geothermal, we have solar, we have wind, we have all types of clean energy inputs. So those three A's are where Hawaii should be and can be global leaders: aquaculture, alternative energy, and aerospace. So that's a long run. That's maybe 2 years out. Immediately, we need to get people back to work, and we need to do reinventing tourism tomorrow.
That's the priority for sure. What about you, Mike? What are you seeing on your end in terms of reinventing our economy at this point?
The struggle with being able to reinvent an economy is that you do need resources to be able to make that pivot. And as the senator mentioned, you want to do that while we have the resources, and right now we don't. But nevertheless, it becomes a question of what little resources you do have. How do you be nimble enough to be able to push things into areas that can hopefully give people a running start, that when the economy does get better, we're able to scale those things up and actually have it run as another engine with our economy. And one of the things that we focused on, and this has been more because not necessarily of diversification, but it's been because of supply chains, and we're very cognizant of the fact that we're in the middle of the ocean and everything gets shipped to us. And with the impending discussions with Young Brothers changing their shipping frequency, or whether they're going to keep shipping at all, and with the pandemic in terms of supply chains coming in from the mainland, and whether or not they can be reliable or consistent, one of the things that we've been focusing on is food security. And so some of our CARES Act money has been pushed towards looking at finishing off cattle, has been pushed at a lot of our other agricultural resources where we can try to scale up and provide food security on our island in case we're in a position where the barges don't come. And so that may pay dividends down the line, but in effect right now, agriculture is more of a necessity that we see, simply because we may be in a position where the barges may not come with food. And so we need to grow it ourselves. And so that's what we've been pushing some of our resources towards.
Yeah, definitely. And I know Kauai has always kind of been a pioneer in trying new things, kind of thinking outside of the box. You guys are in a unique position to do that over there. So that's good to hear. Let's go back to Gemma. For sure, we talk about reinventing and looking at different other types of opportunities. Have your workers maybe thought about exploring new opportunities? I know there's more demand. I just did a story before about these jobs that are hiring during the pandemic. It may not be at the skill set that your workers are in right now, but maybe as a holdover until the hotels come back, until tourism comes back, things like retail, things like security, things like admin work, things like that. Have those discussions been, I guess, made?
Yeah, so it was so surprising with this pandemic when it happened. I think the most important thing is we gotta involve the workers and the public, because it was so surprising to me with this pandemic when I saw everybody become a farmers, they learn how to plant vegetables. Everybody become a gardener. I go to store and I can't buy any seeds, so I can plant something. So I think the most important thing is let's involve the workers. Let us come together, involve the community, involve the public. You will surprise. These people are creative. They can find a way to survive. It's kind of hard. I think I do agree we can't do it now, but at one point we gotta refocus on reinventing the tourism, because if not, we're gonna go back in the same problem. And I don't know if the next time we're all gonna survive. So we have one chance to do it right, and let's do it right. Thank you.
And what about you, Julie? Final thoughts as we wrap up our session.
I think once we do have a plan that can be effectively executed by the government in terms of visitors coming to Hawaii, the anticipated future for the industry is expected to be a slow growth to normal. Some actually say not until 2023 at the very earliest before we see something a little bit more normal. But I think what we have going for us is that our efforts that the industry is making at this time to build trust in travel again by visitors, advantage that Hawaii is still one of the top destinations of choice for travelers, and the fact that Hawaii is recognized as a number one in terms of controlling COVID actually helps, because that's a national recognition. Although I know economically we're suffering, but that's our advantage. And I think that if we can continue to promote our destination as a safe and healthy place to come to, and our industry's commitment shows that, I think with a united effort, and like Gemma said, if we get the workers and the public involved with a united effort, I think we'll get through this together. I don't think tourism is going to die.
Me neither. And I agree with all of you. Thank you so much for all of these sentiments, giving us your perspectives. If anything, Hawaii is resilient. We will make it through, thanks to all of the hard work that all of you are putting in, and the rest of the state as well. So with that, we are out of time, and I see that we brought back Annie from the U.S. Census Bureau. Again, I want to thank all of our panelists. I hope this has given our viewers a sense of hope, some sort of kind of outlet to understand what's happening right now and what we need to go forward. Senator Glenn Wakai, Mike Dahilig, Gemma Weinstein, and Julie Arrigo, thank you so much for taking the time on your Sunday to be with us. And of course, course, U.S. Census's Annie Sokol joining us as well. And again, I want to invite everyone to join the Filipino Complete Count Committee Facebook page. You can win prizes, get more information, and a shout out to all of our radio listeners again on Oahu on KNDI 1270, on Maui Mix 105.5 FM, and on Kauai 107.9 FM KTOH HD3. Mahalo again to our partners, Filipino Complete Count Committee, FYLPRO, Ethnic Education Hawaii, and of course the people behind the scenes who make this all possible for us every time we do this. Sergio Alcobilia, Char McInnes of FYLPRO, and our fearless leader, Senator Benet Misalucha of the Filipino Complete Count Committee. Thank you so much, everybody. And my name is Annalisa Burgos.
Thank you.
Mahalo, everyone. Mahalo for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.